Hi everyone, I'm Christiaan. I'm 23. I was born in Pretoria. I'm currently still living in Pretoria. I'm busy with my final years of architecture school. I'm completing it at the Tshwane University of Technology. I love photography and I love sketching, and I'm an avid music listener. So let's jump into these questions. So the first question says, why are you an architect and have you always wanted to be one? So I'm studying architecture because it's that childhood fantasy I think most of us had, playing with either Legos or blocks or building mud houses or whatever it may be, creating the space that you could call your own and that you could say, I made that. I think architecture is the sort of romanticization of that idea that you never want to grow up and that you want to build things and experiment with things and create these spaces. So I think that's the reason I began studying architecture. The other thing is that I believe that architecture is also one of the few industries and disciplines where one can actually create the future that you really want to live in one day. You physically get to create spaces that people live in, and you get to directly influence and change people's lives. So I think that's also another reason that I began studying architecture. And the part where I've always wanted to be an architect, the simple answer to that is no. For a very long time I've wanted to study veterinary medicines, and I wanted to become a wildlife veterinarian, and there was also a very long time where I also wanted to join the military and go to the army. So no, I haven't always wanted to be an architect. And then, is architecture the same thing you thought it was before architecture school? And the simple answer is no, it's not. It's a lot harder. You get a lot more freedom to do what you want and to express yourself. A lot of late night work, but it's very rewarding as well. It's one of the courses when studying that you actually get to physically see what you're doing, get to see your work and all the hard work and effort that you put into it. So it's really not the same what I thought it would be, but it's much more than what I thought it would be. What is the one thing you wish you knew before starting architecture school? um, there's a lot. The first thing would be, it is a financially taxing degree to study. Yeah, you need money to buy materials, to buy a laptop or computer. Uh, you also won't have a lot of time for family and friends. It's very taxing on your social life if you have one. uh, you don't get to spend as much time with the people that you usually spend time with, and they won't always understand why you don't get to spend time with them anymore. They'll start to think you don't like them anymore, or you're making up stories, but the reality is there's just not always time to get to everyone and everything and do everything you used to do. So you also have to adapt in that sense. And how do you feel about pineapples on pizza? I love pineapples on pizza. I'm part of the group that actually likes it. It's actually my favorite pizza, the Hawaiian pizza. So that's why I stand on that. What's the longest you've gone without sleeping? Um, that's a hard question. I think there's a project we did in third year where we had to design a long span roof, and we also had to do contract documentation, working drawings on that specific project. And I think I worked for two days, maybe 2.5 days straight. Um, if I recall correctly, it's about 52 hours that I went without sleeping. I really wouldn't recommend that for anyone. extremely non-beneficial to your health, and it's very detrimental. You get into this weird headspace and everything. So yeah, for those of you studying architecture school, don't do that. Get your sleep in, and you'll also come up with much better ideas, and you'll feel refreshed in the morning. Don't push yourself that hard. Um, um, Number 6, all architects have a different design process, but finding one that works for you is very hard. How have you designed from first year to date? That is a very, very difficult question to answer, because I think my design process varies from project to project as well. I have to continually adapt to the project. I don't always start all my projects the same. Usually I'll start with a model, other times I'll start with a sketch. Sometimes I'll even start directly modeling on computer. So I don't have a set design process, but finding one that works for you, even if it's not the same with every design, if it works for you, then there's nothing wrong with it. So I started from just sketching on paper with pencil in first year to what I usually do now is I'll get a pen, and just take a book that's near me and just sketch any ideas, whether it's a section or a plan or a party diagram or anything, just to put the idea on paper and then develop it into something tangible that can realize in the future. What's the first thing you do when you get a brief? So the first thing I usually do is I take a highlighter or a perfect marker, and I start highlighting all the important parts. I'll usually also write it out on a piece of paper, just to note and write all the important parts of the project and what's really important. What's also really important is to go through the brief a couple of times, 2 or 3 times, to make sure you know what the brief's about, who you're designing for, where you're designing, so you can take all of those contextual elements into consideration when designing, so that you have something that fits within the context and location of the design, and that you're designing for the relevant people. What are the steps you follow when designing, and are they the same for each project, or do you just wing it? So I think I touched on that on the previous questions. So my design process isn't the same for every project. I usually adapt to the project, and then I work from there. How do you come up with a concept, and how long does it take you? So I don't always, I know it's a very controversial thing to say in architecture school, is I don't always use a concept. It is extremely important to have a concept and beneficial to have a concept, so that you have this tangible idea that you can back up your work with, and yeah. But so when I do come up with a concept, it's something very simplistic that people can relate to, and that people can make their own, so they can make it a part of them, so that they can really get into the headspace I was in when designing something, so that they can also understand the process behind the design and why I did what I did. So I think that's very important when coming up with concepts as well. Number 10, what would be the worst thing for the government to make illegal? Music. So I listen to music 24/7. I think in architecture especially, it's important to have something that can make your time working fun, because it's a very taxing course. As I said previously, you need something to take your mind off things and work, and just to remind you to have fun, yeah. So I think music would definitely be the worst thing. How do you balance your social life and academic life? That's easy. I don't have a social life. No, I'm kidding. So it becomes very important, especially in architecture, how you balance those two, because you can't work yourself to death, but you also can't not do your work. So you have to have a fine balance between working and also making time for family and friends. That's extremely important, and you only start to realize that in your later years, that not everything revolves around work, and you need to be in a good mental headspace as well to design. So, and everyone balances it differently, so it really just depends on yourself, how you go about that. If you could secretly kidnap the star architect to do all your work for you, who would it be and why? So I'd definitely kidnap Björk Engels. I don't think that's something I'd ever thought I'd say on video, but yeah, definitely kidnap Björk Engels. And I choose him because I think we think the same way in terms of design. You have to include the users of the building into the design process, and you have to really design for the people that's going to be using the spaces. His design processes are all, there's a lot of thought into it. It's very contextual buildings. It's fun. It's a new take on old ways of construction and design. So yeah, I think I'll definitely choose Björk Engels. And is there a secret to architectural design? Why is it so hard? And why is it easy for others? I don't think there's a secret in architectural design. Some people are maybe more expressive than others, and other designers just have a more conservative approach to design. No matter what your view is on design, there's always going to be people that's going to disagree with you, that's going to agree with you, that's going to judge you no matter what you do. And I think this, if you can really design for contextually, if you can design within context, then there's no reason why other people's comments should affect you. Yeah, it's just some people also just have an easier time thinking outside of the box. In school we get so conditioned to thinking inside the box, and this is right, this is right, this is wrong, don't do something like this, do it like this. And it does get a while to get out of that headspace from school, where you're literally fed with a teaspoon and taught how to do everything. Then when you get into design school, it's something completely different, and you have to think for yourself, and you have to back up what your designs are trying to portray to other people, and that can be difficult sometimes. And the next question says, ArchiCAD versus Revit, which is your favorite software and why? So I'm a big fan of Revit. I started with Revit in second year, and I think I choose Revit just because I found it easier to do conceptual massing with it and do massing in place with Revit. So it just allowed me to more quickly get my ideas, on a piece of paper, or on a computer screen, and then it's easier for me to just print it out and do sketches over that. So that's why for me personally, I choose Revit. Which architect influences your work the most and how? I'd definitely say it's Björk Engels, and then there's a firm, I believe they're based in Norway, that's called Snøhetta. And Snøhetta especially works a lot with buildings in sensitive areas and nature, and their views on how nature and people interact and how they should coexist is something that I take to heart and something that I fully agree with. So I think their work, more than anyone else's work, influences me a lot because of the way they think about things, how they resolve problems when designing. I feel is one of the reasons I relate strongly to their work. And we're often told to read as much as we can to broaden our knowledge. How often do you do that, and which books would you recommend? So I don't read as often. I'm more a visual person in terms of seeing pictures and videos. So I'd often go just onto YouTube and YouTube videos on how to do something, presentation styles, sketch styles, anything like that, and watch documentaries especially. I love watching documentaries on design, so I usually watch documentaries instead of reading. But there's a couple of documentaries I can recommend on Netflix. There's a series called Minimalism, and Abstract. On YouTube you can find various videos of famous architects where they take you through their design process and thoughts behind some famous buildings. So that's also something I can recommend. In your opinion, what do you think makes a great architect? So for me, a great architect is someone that can think on their feet. They don't shy away from challenges. They find new ways to in designing, especially on how to better people's lives. They have a new approach on it can be old subjects, that they just put a new approach on. It's someone that's very versatile, that they know a lot of things, know a lot of small things about everything, and then based on that knowledge they can put together tangible designs. And it's also someone that's opinionated, in a good sense, where you have to lift your opinion and you have to be able to work together in a group and collaborate with very different people, and how you can still listen to everyone and then put all of the thoughts and comments that's made from people into one design. So I think that's something very important that an architect should have. If you could reverse the invention of something, what would it be? I'd have to say bread, because everyone always says the best thing since sliced bread, so I think that could be something cool to have under your name. And what was the best thing before sliced bread? I'd have to say probably the wheel or unsliced bread. What message would you like to share with civil structural engineers that think architects are ignorant and unnecessary in the built environment? That's a tough question. There's always going to be differences in opinions, especially on site and between architects, designers and engineers, and we all have our space, and it's about finding a workflow that integrates both, or the multitude of professions, and just finding a way to work together. I think a lot of the times engineers think that architects are out of their depth when they speak about structural components or something like that, and why a certain design wouldn't work, especially based on that. But I think architects, in a sense, do know what they're talking about, especially when they've done the research, and they can actually bring something to the table, and vice versa. So with architects, when engineers speak about design, it's about listening to each other and then working together to find the best solution. If you had to choose between model building, CAD modeling, and presentation posters, which could you happily do all day? So I'd have to choose presentation posters, because it's very relaxing, and that's when you get to listen to music and just be calm, and you get to see all the hard work that you've done come together. So I definitely choose presentation posters. Why do you think your architects do needs to improve to make your life as a student better. Definitely Wi-Fi. We're struggling with Wi-Fi in our architecture buildings, so if they can improve the Wi-Fi, my life would also improve. If animals could talk, which would be the rudest? I think definitely cats, because they can't even talk and they're rude, so I think definitely cats. What advice would you give someone who is thinking of venturing into architecture? Don't. I'm kidding. No, make sure it's something that you really want to do. It's not an easy course. There is going to be late nights, not a lot of social activities. So make sure it's something that you absolutely want to do before studying architecture. But it is an extremely rewarding course to study. You physically get to see your work come to life in a sense, and just don't lose focus of why you wanted to study architecture, and then there will be no reason for you to fail. So just keep on keeping on. And quote of the day by yourself. So for me, it's about loving what you do. So if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, and you have to find humor in the little things. Life is so serious, and it gets easy to get caught up in the moment of everything. But remember to enjoy yourself and to make lasting impact while you're here. So just enjoy what you're doing, and then everything's going to be okay. And my social media handles, I think it's Christiaan _ Darful or Redefine Photography. It's my photography page. So thank you all, and I hope you have an amazing day.